A few weeks ago, Germany's highest court told the government that its budget for 2024 is unconstitutional. The result, a huge hole, 60 billion euros suddenly cut from the budget. What followed was weeks of political wrangling as the government tried to fill that gap. Well, now Germans are finding out who will feel the pinch of this austerity. DW's Michaela Küfner reports.
These demonstrations by farmers sum up the dramatic loss in trust the German government is currently seeing over budget cuts.
They have no clue, and we're having to pay for it.
Farmers are angry about subsidy cuts on diesel fuel, but they are not alone. Polls show that overall, only 17% of Germans are still happy with the work of Chancellor Olaf Scholz's three-way coalition of Social Democrats, Greens and the pro-business Liberal FDP party.
And the Chancellor isn't saying a thing. These days there isn't even a need for an opposition. People are making up their own minds on what's happening.
What's happening is that Scholz's cabinet has started attacking their own budget compromise that took weeks to reach. This after a court ruling in mid-November forced the government to present new plans. At their last cabinet meeting before the Christmas break, coalition ministers were officially informed about the deal. Patience is wearing thin on all sides.
Personally, I would have preferred to have been able to tell you all these details earlier, but it took as long as it did, and now everyone has a reliable basis to act upon.
Painful is how several ministries have described the cuts they now face. 800 million euros alone will be slashed from Germany's foreign policy budgets. So political Berlin may look empty over the Christmas break, but all ministries are juggling their figures until Parliament sits again in January.
And for more on Germany's budget problems, I want to bring in our political correspondent, Simon Young. Simon, not much Christmas cheer coming from the government with these cuts, I would assume.
I think that's right, Brent. The opposition parties are saying that the government has put a package of measures under the Christmas tree designed to create the impression there is no budget problem. But in fact, they say, it's not what it seems to be. And what it really means is a lot of pain, particularly, they say, for working people and for rural communities. And there's going to be a lot of discussion and debate about exactly how the government can get itself out of this budgetary hole.
Yeah, I mean, a situation like this doesn't just come down the chimney in one night, Simon. Remind us how the government got into this mess in the first place.
Yeah, well, it was back in mid-November that Germany's constitutional court produced a ruling saying that some of the government's spending plans were illegal, essentially, and that left a 60 billion euro hole in the budget. Now, that led to crisis talks, really, between Chancellor Scholz and the heads of the other two parties in his coalition. 200 hours of talks and a lot of head-scratching. What's come out of it are proposals, some of which have been signed off now, 12 billion euros less for the Green Transformation Fund. Just think about that, 12 billion euros. It's a lot of money. And some other savings in other areas, 800 million off the international aid budget, 380 million off the Transport Ministry's budget, 600 million less for the state pension scheme. And another one to mention, 900 million euros less in tax breaks for farmers. And we've seen those loud protests on the streets of Berlin in recent days by farmers. And I think there'll be more cuts to come and more pain and more debate down the line.
Yeah, those farmers, too, are protesting more protests in the new year. I'm wondering, though, Simon, isn't this much ado about nothing? I mean, why can't Germany just borrow more money to cover the shortfall? Just go into a little bit more debt like everyone else does? Well,
indeed, they will borrow more money than planned. They'll be increasing borrowing by 70 billion euros or so for 2024. But it won't be more than that, because I think the government wants to show that it remains committed to sound financial management, and in particular to the debt brake, the rules that limit the amount of borrowing that the government can take on. That's something that Chancellor Olaf Scholz is particularly committed to, as well as his Finance Minister Christian Lindner. Others are saying, you know, it's time to revise those rules, to loosen those limits. And create the possibility of investment. But at any rate, for the moment, the debt brake is, in fact, suspended. That's allowed under the rules in times of emergency. And this 2024 will, in fact, be the 4th year in a row that Germany has suspended its own self-imposed debt limit rules.
OK, well, now we understand. Our political correspondent Simon Young with the latest tonight, despite not having any presents under that Christmas tree this year. Thank you, Simon.